This short video was produced by the Delaware Network for Excellence in Autism team at the University of Delaware's Center for Disability Studies. Welcome to the DNEA tutorial on chaining. This tutorial has been designed to support professionals and family members who wish to teach a person with autism a new, multi-step, that is, chained skill. This evidence-based practice is appropriate to use across multiple settings. Please use the following citation guidelines when referencing this tutorial. A task analysis is an evidence-based practice used to break down complex chain behaviors into small, discrete steps. Task analyses treat each step as a discrete skill that can be systematically taught one by one until the entire chain is mastered. Task analyses can be used to teach a wide variety of skills such as cooking, using a computer, self-care, or self-management strategies. There are several important features to remember when designing and using a task analysis. First, some chain skills do not have a specific order that everyone uses. Consider making a sandwich, for example. Some people may put the toppings on first, while others may put the mustard and mayonnaise first. It is important that you select a logical and generalizable sequence of steps that work for your learner. The steps of the chain skill should represent easily mastered discrete skills. Compiling each discrete step will cue the learner to begin the next step. When you are designing a task analysis, you should record each step as a succinct directive using observable terms that are meaningful to the person you are supporting. This is the language that you will use if you need to give a written or verbal prompt. There are 6 steps for planning and using a task analysis. The first is to identify the target skill. Remember, task analyses are only used to teach chain behaviors. That is, behaviors that are comprised of multiple steps. Once you have identified the target skill, determine if there are any prerequisite skills or materials that might be needed. Then you are going to break the skill down into its individual, discrete steps. This is your task analysis. It is sometimes helpful to confirm these steps with a colleague or friend to make sure you have each step of the chain adequately represented. Alternatively, you can also observe people performing the chain skill in order to consider the steps you may have forgotten. Once you have planned your task analysis, it is time to determine how it will be taught. You will want to consider how you will prompt each step of the chain and ways you may want to reinforce the person who you are supporting. Finally, it's time to implement and monitor your progress. I want to pause for a moment and talk about considerations when planning to use a task analysis. Visual supports are commonly used for task analyses as they often remain in place as semi-permanent or permanent supports. If you think about your favorite recipe, you may have a recipe card, a cookbook, or a saved website that keeps the measurement of that recipe available to you for future cooking. This is a visual support of chain tasks that you use when cooking. Visual supports should be the same across all settings and should be somewhere that can be easily referenced. It might also be necessary to pre-teach prerequisite skills, such as typing when learning to complete online job applications, or providing additional permanent supports, such as adaptive equipment. There are also considerations you should take when teaching a task analysis. It is important that everyone who supports a person who is learning a new chain skill use the same procedure. First, you will consider how you will teach each step of the task analysis. You will identify which prompts you will use and how you will fade those prompts over time. Next, you will consider the sequence that you teach each step of the task analysis. There are 3 methods: forward, backward, and total task chaining. Then you will consider how you will provide reinforcement. It is important to reinforce each step of the chain and the entire task once it's completed. Develop a plan for thinning reinforcement over time. The final consideration is latency, or the time it takes a person to respond to a cue and begin each step of the chain. Remember, because each step of the task analysis is serving as a cue for a subsequent step, you also want to consider how long you are going to wait for an individual to initiate each step of the chain after completing the prior step. The typical latency for most people is between 3 to 5 seconds. Defining a latency will help you know when to step in and provide a prompt. If you want to learn more about prompting and reinforcement, please review our other DNEA tutorials and resource guides. There are 3 different ways that you can introduce the steps of a task analysis: backwards chaining, forwards chaining, and total task chaining. Backward and forward chaining both teach one step at a time. Backward chaining begins by teaching the final step of the chain and then systematically introduces each prior step. It is beneficial because reinforcement is able to be provided immediately after the portion of the steps that are being targeted and promotes a feeling of success for the task as a whole. Forward chaining begins by teaching the first step of the chain and then systematically introducing each subsequent step. It is beneficial because each step of the task is targeted in the order it was intended and is good for learners who have difficulty getting started on a chain. During forward and backward chaining, you complete the steps of the chain that are not being targeted until they are ready to be introduced. Total task chaining is different than forward and backward chaining because all of the steps of the chain are targeted simultaneously. This is best used for chains that are very long in length or ones that are partially mastered. The DNEA helps the community stay informed by developing and distributing information and resources on issues that impact people with autism, their families, and the professionals who serve them. Professionals are encouraged to visit our website or contact us for additional resources and support.